Welcome to the Kevin Dunn Show, and we are so excited that you're taking the time out to join us. Have another very special show on tap for you today. Our special guest today, Susan Marshall. We're going to be talking about mindful exploration. When we come back from the commercial break, we're going to be introducing to you Susan Marshall, who is a licensed counselor.
At Charter Bank, you get totally free checking with online statements. You betcha. Free mobile banking, free online banking, free online bill pay, free debit card, even a new account gift. Free. At Charter Bank, we're here to wow you. And totally free checking is just the beginning. Come see us or open online at charterbank.net. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
Choosing a new home can be one of the most difficult decisions of your life, whether the choice is for you or a loved one. Poplar Creek specializes in intimate, individual, personal care for each resident through a staff that knows each resident personally. Poplar Creek is a senior living community specializing in senior living and memory care. Dining is always a relaxing event in their beautiful dining area where they provide full table service. Enjoy a full list of amenities, including a beautiful outside walking area and a beauty and barber salon. Make the right choice. Make Poplar Creek your new home.
Welcome back to the Kevin Dunn Show, where we have Susan Marshall in our studios today. How are you doing today, Mrs. Marshall?
Good, thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you here. You're going to be sharing some valuable information about mindful exploration. You are the founder of the Center of Mindful Exploration.
Yes.
Can you tell us, if someone is wondering, what is the Center for Mindful Exploration?
So the Center for Mindful Exploration actually grew out of the fact that I've been meditating personally for more than 25 years. Mm-hmm. I've been a psychotherapist for about 10 years, and meditation and traditional therapy, mm-hmm. cognitive behavior therapy, basically say the same thing. What becomes our problems and what creates our suffering is not so much the suffering that we encounter, but the way we relate to it and the thoughts we have about it. So I started working with clients in my counseling practice with meditation. But when you come to counseling, you have a lot of things you want to talk about. So I wanted to start teaching meditation as a more holistic practice. So I actually started by just teaching meditation classes. And then that grew into, I now have partnered up with a yoga therapist whose name's Joanne Rogers. Okay. And she and I do several different types of workshops. She does yoga classes, and we do meditation workshops. We're doing a workshop September 13th called Balanced Empathy, that works with people who have a hard time saying no, people who are kind of caregivers and don't know how to set good boundaries for themselves and take care of themselves. So we do a variety now of workshops and retreats and classes.
Great, great. Now, how can a person truly, and I know this is a wide range here, but how can people truly explore their mind?
Well, so with the Center for Mindful Exploration, we're actually doing two things. So first of all, you can explore your mind. Mm-hmm. Most of the way that we relate to ourselves and our world and what we do is habitual, programmed behaviors. So we learn stuff as a kid and we just assume all of that is true, and a lot of it is unconscious, and we just respond and react to the world from that space. With meditation and with some of these practices, we learn to sit back a little bit and disengage from our reactive behavior and look at the way our mind is working and look at some of the unconscious assumptions we make about the world and the kinds of ways we have to react to it. And we can stop and we can create a space and make more conscious choices about what we're doing and how we're interacting and if we even need to do things. So with that, and then the other thing is to be able to take that space and look at all kinds of topics, the way we relate to each other, our plans for the future, in a less reactive way.
Okay, all right. Now, what does anxiety, trauma, depression, what do they all have in common?
Well, you have to tease out sort of natural life things like anxiety and grief from what we call more pathological, sort of like further down on the spectrum. So in life, what we don't want to do is we don't want to medicate or therapize or meditate our way out of negative experiences. Someone dies, you have a loss, you lose your job, something like that happens, you need to feel and process and experience the pain of that experience. So, but then there's a place where the brain chemistry begins to become affected by that, and you can't function. You're crying all day, you can't get out of bed, you're angry. And so at that point now we're in a more pathological area, and that requires a little different approach to that. So the negative stuff in life is okay and expected and good, and so we just want to tease that out from when it's sort of impacted our functioning.
So you're saying never cut off the process?
Absolutely, and that's actually where we get stuck, because a lot of times negative experiences are too painful to deal with, and so we just push them down, push them down, push them down, and that's actually where the problem comes. So like post-traumatic stress disorder, you can put two people through the same traumatic experience. One may get PTSD and one won't, and the difference there is one person allowed themselves to think about it, talk to people about it, and process it, get through that really painful part and get to the other side. For some people, reliving that experience is so painful that we just keep pushing it down, and that's where it creates problems, because it's waiting around in the cells of our body to be expressed, and it'll come out in panic attacks and nightmares and flashbacks until we decide to sit with it and work through it.
Wow, so that's something you have to get to the heart of the matter. It's actually deeper than what we see just on the surface.
Absolutely.
With someone who experienced a loss, is it normal for them to not have anxiety, grief, or depression if they've experienced a loss? Is that normal?
No, not usually. And of course it depends on the depth of the loss and how close, if it was a person, or it just depends on the impact of the loss. But in general, loss is a difficult thing. And so if you're not feeling it, often what you see is like if somebody dies, the first year may be kind of okay because you're kind of busy with whatever legal stuff has to be done, and you stay kind of busy. And often with delayed grief, we see people in therapy a year, 2 years, 3 years later, because they never allowed themselves to really experience the pain of that loss.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I read on your, I don't know if it was your blog or your website, you actually state that everyone, we all have an innate ability to heal our mind.
Right.
Can you share with why do you believe that we all have that ability?
Well, first of all, what we've done in Western culture is we've kind of separated mind and body, which is a little silly because it's all here. It's all connected.
All right.
The brain is part of the central nervous system, which goes out throughout the whole body, and we're taking in information all over our body that's going to our brain. So the body has an innate ability to heal. Unless you have a problem with your immune functioning, if you cut yourself, it will heal.
Right.
So we do have an ability to heal. In our culture, we have a tendency to keep pushing and pushing and pushing, and don't sleep and don't eat. Just run through the drive-thru and grab something and stay up. And I always say we worship the Energizer Bunny. You just keep going and going. So we often override our body signals that say, oh, you should sleep. Oh, you should kind of take a break, or you should eat something healthy instead of that processed food, or you should connect with somebody who matters to you. So we override it. And if we would sort of kind of come to a stiller point and listen, we actually would move more toward healing.
Okay, you say we have the ability, and people, are hearing you that you're saying that.
Right.
If we have it, and I'm pretty sure, I would say 80% of the people may have heard that somewhere, or may have known it somewhere. If we have that ability, why do we choose not to use it?
Well, I think part of it has to do with that we are really, truly not taught to stop and be still and listen. We are taught to override it. So I think that's a piece of it. And then the other piece is just sort of not wanting to do the longer term organic work.
Organic.
It's easier to do the quick fix than to live a healthier lifestyle.
It is.
Right.
It is. Well, I'm actually just thinking about myself now, and wondering how often do I actually just slow down and just sit and just not do anything.
Right.
And those times are very few and far between. that ability that you're talking about, what percentage of it is mental?
I don't know, what percentage of it is, but a huge piece of it is. And when you think about it again, when you say mental and physical, we're separating the mind and the body, and they work together. So one of the things we know is that stress has a huge impact on our health.
Right.
I have clients who come in and say, oh, my stomach is acting up, my eczema is acting up, I'm having more pain, all kinds of stuff. And it's all related to things that may or may not already kind of be problematic, but we add that stress load, which changes the whole body chemistry. And so our bodies no longer have the ability. When we get stressed, the blood vessels constrict, the muscles constrict, the air passage constricts, the gut constricts. So now nothing can flow. Nothing can flow. And all the mechanisms, the heart that are trying to push things through, are having to work harder. When we do that deep exhalation, we engage the parasympathetic nervous system, which is our rest and digest, which opens things up, allows things to flow, and that actually engages that automatic healing.
So when you're sitting there meditating, is it more so that you need to be thinking about something in specific as you meditate, or it's just sitting there and just being still?
Okay, so I teach, the type of meditation I teach is mindfulness meditation. So in mindfulness meditation, we start with a one-pointed focus, and we call it that anchoring. And so we anchor to the breath. So breathing in,
Correct.
breathing out, and you get that focus. But then we sit back and we start to watch the thoughts, because what happens is thoughts are going through our mind like they're just going down a stream all day long, constant. The brain is very busy. You think you're driving down the road or washing dishes, but your brain is off doing something else, okay? So these thoughts are going on all the time, and we catch them and we just go down the stream with them. In mindfulness meditation, we learn to sit on the bank and watch them. And we go, oh, there's that. And then we see our tendency to go, oh no, I got to think about that. And we learn to oh no, we can come back.
Wow, that's incredible. We're going to have to pause and take a quick commercial break. And when we come back from the commercial break, we're going to be discussing more about mindful exploration with Susan Marshall. You have pain, we have solutions. Total Healthcare of LaGrange Joint Restoration Program specializes in providing electrical stimulation and injections to get rid of your knee and shoulder pain. Total Healthcare's injections helps and repair ligaments, taking away all of your knee pain within 5 to 7 weeks. We offer special braces and supports to assist you, and we are now accepting Medicare with payment plans as low as $20 per month. If your joints need lubricating and you desire to regain mobility of your knee free of pain, Total Healthcare can make you new all over again.
Life in the country is a conscious choice. And with that choice comes hard work, attention to detail, and investing in the right tools to keep your home or farm at its best. So why choose anything but the very best zero turns on the market today? Exmark. Known for their durability, precision cut, and time-saving performance, Exmarks are the preferred brand of mowing equipment for the landscape professional and people like you who take pride in their lawn. For special pricing incentives, visit exmark.com or your local dealer.
It's a below invoice truck event at the all-new Opelika Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram and Opelika Ford. Just 25 minutes from Columbus. Brand new trucks $6,000 below invoice. Plus pre-owned trucks up to 50% off original list. Four-wheel drive, two-wheel drive, new, pre-owned, and even lifted trucks. We are your Rocky Ridge headquarters. All the accessories you need to lift, lower, and load up. 10 acres, 1,000 vehicles.
Folks, you've just got to see this place.
The below invoice truck event at the all-new Opelika Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram and Opelika Ford.
Welcome back to the Kevin Dunn Show, where we are with special guest today, Susan Marshall, who's the owner and operator of the Mindful Exploration Center for Mindful Exploration, and we're talking and she's sharing some valuable information with us. Susan, on your website, you said that healing can be heard when we quiet the internal chatter and judgment and begin to hear the small, quiet voice. What do you mean by that?
So, we were talking earlier about how so much of what we do is just automatic programming. So let me tell you a little story that kind of got me going on this. And this happened in my early 20s, long time ago.
Right.
I was working at a school then, and I decided it would be a great idea to start a volleyball team for the teachers and the staff. Now, I don't particularly like team sports, and I don't have great hand-eye coordination. But I thought this would be a great idea. So a friend of mine who knew me well came to me and she said, I have one question.
All right.
Why is it that no matter what lame brain scheme you come up with, people rally around you? And I thought about that for a minute, and I looked at her and I said, I just assume they will. And she looked like I had thrown a bucket of cold water over her head. And she said, I always assume they won't.
All right.
And that was a really telling, deep moment for both of us, because what was happening is we both had some really unconscious assumptions about who we were, how people related to us, what our relationship was, what our ability to make things happen. And we didn't know that we had these underlying operating systems that were pretty much handed to us in childhood.
Right.
We had no control over that. So what happens is we start just living our whole lives by these pre-programmed habitual wiring that started out from the day we were born and we just kept building on, okay? So that's where we live from. And a lot of that is critical of self, really critical of self, and critical of others. And when we learn to be quiet and still, and we sit on that bank and we watch those thoughts go by, we start to see, wow, I didn't know that was there. And we start to question the truth of that. And when we start to see it and quiet it, we no longer have to be kind of jerked around by it. I always say your thoughts are like a team of wild horses. If you train them, they are awesome tools, but if you don't, they just drag you around the planet. So when we quiet that, we can hear sort of our more inner truth, our ability to sit back and look at things a little more objectively and a little less habitually.
So this is something that actually takes place over time. You have to train yourself to sit and hear that quiet voice.
Absolutely.
Because I know a lot of times it's just tough to shut your mind down from work, church, family, responsibilities. What are some other ways that you can help train yourself to shut your mind down so that all these things that when you're at home in your quiet time, you're thinking about everything at work that you left undone. What are some other practices, some practical practices that people can use to help shut their minds down?
So first of all, we don't want to shut the mind down, right? Because we'd die. But we do want to quiet it, and mostly we just kind of see what's going on with it. So first of all, what happens when I teach people in therapy to meditate, I tell them, kind of what's going to happen. And they come back in and they say, yeah, I can't do that.
Right.
And I'm like, well, why can't you do that? I can't stop the thoughts. And I was like, I didn't tell you to stop the thoughts. I can't stop my thoughts either, you know? And so it's not so much that you're going to stop the thoughts, but when you start to just do that breathing. And the other thing is that engages the relaxation response. Our bodies are programmed to calm down when we breathe, but we override it and we stay so busy that it takes a while for that to feel okay. Because you're like, oh, I could be cooking dinner, or I could be, but I always tell people, if you watched a sitcom, I was 30 minutes.
That was 30
and
minutes.
how many of us watch one? Most of us watch like 3 or 4.
Right.
So if you'd just taken the time for one of those and just sat and breathed, you'd have gotten a whole lot more out of that 30 minutes. So it's not a matter of do we have the time, it's a matter of am I willing to find the time? And I know it's a struggle for me too.
Right.
It's trying to find the time. So the breathing and the meditation. Also practices like yoga. Being in nature, there's a huge body of research right now that talks about how when we spend time in nature, it resets our natural mechanism. Basically, like we live in a society that is not based on like the circadian rhythm, the setting and and rising of the sun. That's totally overrides our natural rhythms. Well, that's one of the reasons we're staying stressed out.
Right.
We're operating on a system that's not what we were created to do. So part of this is we kind of quiet it and we give our bodies a chance to actually be heard and stop overriding all this stuff. But practices like yoga, meditation, Tai Chi, all of those are great forms for stilling and focusing the mind.
Wow, that's awesome. I'm going to put you on the spot. Well, I probably can't put you on the spot. But anyway, in your studies, What are scholars actually saying when someone commits a violent crime, when someone is about to kill, when someone is about to just do something horrific? What are scholars saying that may be going on in their mind at that time when they feel that's what they need or want to do?
Right. So I'm not sure you can make one sweeping generalization. I think that's probably dependent on the case. But one of the things you hear a lot, if somebody commits suicide, but that's a real typical thing.
Right.
So somebody like you and I sitting here, with relatively, we have stressors, but things are kind of okay and our brain chemistry is pretty balanced. And we would say, well, I would never do that.
Exactly.
Well, no, I would never do that with my brain chemistry. And that person wouldn't have done it with my brain chemistry either. But when the brain chemistry gets out of whack, just like everything else in your body, there's a balance that's supposed to happen. If your insulin levels go down, if your potassium levels go down, you're going to crash physically. Same thing with your neurotransmitter. When your serotonin levels go down, which is your feel-good chemistry, your regulatory chemistry, when that crashes and your cortisol levels go way up, which is your stress hormone, and the whole brain chemistry gets out of whack, all of a sudden you have a totally different mechanism. So one of the things that happens is one of the hallmarks of good mental health is mental flexibility. So let's say you have a thought like that, I'm just going to kill that person, or whatever. Then you have another thought that goes, oh, that's not going to happen. I mean, you have some other choices, and you make whatever. So when the serotonin levels go down, the mental flexibility narrows. And whatever that thought is becomes truth.
Wow.
And that's all you can see, and that becomes really rigid. And that's a result of the brain chemistry. So part of this is that we have to get in and we have to recognize in ourselves when we're no longer functioning well, when we're defaulting to the extreme negative, and it's time to go ahead and say, it's okay for me to get some intervention and some help with that. And I think, Kevin, that's the hardest part for people, is admitting that there's a problem. Because so many people are suffering from anxiety and depression and panic attacks so unnecessarily because it is so treatable. So, just to admit that things are going in a bad direction for me, and I could actually get help with this.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, you have a conference taking place on September the 13th.
We have
can you tell us a little bit about that?
Thank you. That's it's Balanced Empathy. It's September 13th from 9 to 5. It's an all-day workshop. Joanne and I are doing it. Joanne is the yoga instructor. It's for people who are caregiving types, always reaching out to everyone, have a really hard time saying no, and become really depleted. So it's like, why is that happening? Why do we have a hard time setting healthier boundaries for ourselves? What's the impact of that? And how can I take better care of myself to make healthier choices for how we help ourselves and then other people? And it will be a combination of a little bit of yoga, but that will be, anybody can do it. It's a very gentle yoga, and Joanne is very flexible about how she works with people. Some meditation, some learning, not lecturing, but some teaching, and a lot of interaction, a lot of journaling exercises. It's all of our classes are very interactive, but a lot of time for exploring the mechanism that's happening inside for you and how to work with that.
Awesome. Yeah. Now I'm going back to thinking about Robin Williams a few weeks back. What a sad indictment that you can make everyone else laugh, but yourself. And so basically what you're saying, he had an issue that he chose other ways to deal with it. Right,
absolutely. And I don't know all the details of what happened. I kind of stay away from that news.
Okay.
But definitely, I mean, he had a chronic mental illness that, and one of the things is, if you do have chronic mental illness, the first phase of that is to get you out of crisis. So to get the brain chemistry stabilized. But then beyond that, there's a long path of wellness about how do you stay stable and how do you recognize when things are starting to go in a bad direction, and how do you intervene. And once you get to that point, you're good to go. And so apparently, things had gone really bad. And like I said, I can't sit here and judge what was going on with Robin Williams or anybody else. Because I'm sitting here with better brain chemistry happening for me right now in this moment. Maybe not tomorrow, we'll see.
So it's all about the brain chemistry.
Absolutely.
And we think a lot of times people just do things just because. But there are so many other variables that cause them to act the way they do. Susan, if someone watching today, listening to you and talking about the meditation and the mind, and they would say, well, Susan, the only thing I need to meditate on is the Word of God, and I don't need to meditate on anything else. How would you respond to someone believing that?
The first thing I would say is I would question, I would tease out, are we talking about meditation or are we talking about studying and worship? Because those are two different things, and both very valuable and important things. So if it's studying and worship, I would say, rock on, keep doing that.
Right.
That's great. If that's working for you, that's great. But if it's not meditation, then you might want to add the meditation practice. So first of all, I would tease out the difference between worship and study and meditation. But then meditation is used, and I use it primarily in a non-religious I can't say non-spiritual, but non-religious context. But all religious traditions, Christianity, Judaism, Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism, religious traditions throughout the world use meditation, and often the focal point, like I talked about the focal point being the breath, often the focal point is the name of Jesus, or be still and know that I'm God, or Om, which is the sort of international sound for the divine. So all types of traditions will use scriptures or words or sounds that evoke the divine and use that as the focal point of their meditation. And the research on that is that it has incredible benefits.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, Susan, we thank you for taking time out of your schedule. You're a licensed counselor. I know that you're super busy with helping people and understanding themselves, and wish you much success with the event. Once again, September the 13th. And what are those times again?
From 9 to 5, and the counseling practice is at West Georgia Psychiatric Center.
Okay, West Georgia Psychiatric Center. Okay.
Great. And my website, can I
Go
do
ahead,
that?
sure. Yeah.
It's the Center for Mindful Exploration .wordpress.com, and we're also on Facebook.
Great, great. And you've heard Susan, get somewhere still and slow those thoughts down, slow your mind down so you can meditate and allow your body to function properly so everything else can be in order. As always, thank you so much for watching The Kevin Dunn Show. If you have a topic that you would like to see discussed, please email us at thekevindunnshow@wjcntv.com. Thank you for watching and have a wonderful day.